Most people think mythical creatures are just that, myths. But what if I told you some of the most famous ones might be based on real animals? Sounds crazy, right? But stay with me. There are some creatures you've heard of for years, from dragons to mermaids, that could have started as real-life discoveries. And trust me, it's not as wild as it sounds. You see, humans have been fascinated by mythical creatures for centuries. Dragons, unicorns, phoenixes. These beings have survived through countless stories, legends, and even ancient art. But the question is, why do so many cultures have similar creatures? Were they all just making things up? Or is it possible these myths were inspired by something real? In this video, I'm going to show you 11 of the most iconic mythical creatures that could have come from actual animals or natural phenomena. We'll take a look at how stories of fire-breathing dragons might have been sparked by dinosaur fossils, how unicorns could have been inspired by narwhals, and much more. So, forget everything you know about myths. Some creatures we'll discuss today might have had a real-world origin. Ready to find out which ones? Let's get started. Number 11. Dragons. Dragons are everywhere. Every mythology seems to have its version of these fire-breathing beasts. Whether it's the Chinese dragon, which symbolizes power and good fortune, or the terrifying European dragon guarding treasure, they all have one thing in common. They're vast and horrifying. But what if these dragons weren't just fantasy? What if they were inspired by something real? Think about it. In ancient times, people didn't have the same scientific knowledge we do today. So, when they found giant bones or huge fossilized skeletons, what else could they think? Imagine coming across the bones of a dinosaur. Bones so massive that they could have belonged to some kind of giant, flying, fire-breathing reptile. Sounds like a dragon, right? And that's not all. The discovery of large reptiles like crocodiles and Komodo dragons could have added to the dragon myth. These creatures might have seemed almost magical to people who had never seen anything like them. Combine that with a bit of imagination and fear of the unknown, and you've got yourself a dragon myth that lasts thousands of years. So, the next time you hear about a dragon, don't dismiss it as fantasy. Maybe it's not so far-fetched after all. 10. Unicorns. Unicorns have been a part of human history for centuries. From ancient Greek and Roman writings to medieval tapestries and even modern-day fairy tales, they're usually depicted as majestic, horse-like creatures with a single spiraling horn. But what if unicorns weren't just made up? What if they were based on real animals people encountered long ago? It sounds wild, right? But there's a good chance the legend of the unicorn could have come from real creatures, like narwhals. These are marine mammals with long spiral tusks that look almost like horns. Imagine sailors on a long voyage spotting a narwhal for the first time. Its tusk would have seemed otherworldly. It's easy to see how a single horned creature could evolve into the unicorn legend we know today. But it doesn't end there. Ancient people may have also seen one-horned animals like the oryx, a type of antelope, or even early species of rhinoceros with single horns. As these animals were often seen in distant lands, and their appearances were strange and rare, it makes sense that they'd become part of a myth about a powerful, mystical creature. Remember, sometimes myths are just stories based on what people see around them. 9. Kraken. When most people think of the Kraken, they picture a giant sea monster with massive tentacles reaching up from the depths to pull ships under. This legendary creature has haunted sailors' nightmares for centuries, especially in Scandinavian folklore. But could the Kraken be more than just a myth? What if real, giant sea creatures inspired it? It's not as far-fetched as you might think. The most likely inspiration for the Kraken could be giant squids, creatures that live in the deep ocean. These squid can grow up to 40 feet long, with tentacles that could easily be mistaken for something out of a horror story. Add in the fact that they live in remote, unexplored parts of the ocean, and it's no wonder sailors, who were already terrified of the unknown, could have exaggerated their size and danger. Another possible source for the Kraken myth is the giant octopus. With their large, powerful arms and ability to survive in deep waters, they could easily stir up stories of sea monsters. Even today, people occasionally report sightings of huge octopuses or squids, some so big they seem to have come straight out of a legend. 8. Phoenix. The phoenix is one of the most famous mythical creatures, a magnificent bird that bursts into flames and rises from its ashes. It's a symbol of rebirth and immortality in many different cultures, from Greek to Egyptian mythology. But what if the story of the phoenix didn't just come from pure imagination? What if real-life events and animals inspired this myth? One possible explanation for the phoenix could be the observation of colorful birds. especially those with brilliant feathers that appear to renew themselves as they molt. Birds like peacocks or flamingos, with their vibrant, ever-changing colors, might have sparked the idea of a bird that transforms and regenerates. Another possibility is that the phoenix myth could have originated from astronomical events. Imagine ancient people witnessing a comet or a shooting star streaking across the sky. To them, these celestial events might have seemed like the death and rebirth of a cosmic bird, burning up and then reappearing. This could easily have been linked to the phoenix's cycle of fiery destruction and rebirth. Finally, the phoenix could symbolize the natural cycle of life and death. Many ancient cultures were deeply connected to life and renewal, especially the changing seasons. The phoenix could have represented the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, a theme in nature all around us. 7. Griffins. Griffins are one of the most striking creatures in ancient mythology. Half eagle, half lion, with a lion's strength and an eagle's sharp eyesight. They've been seen in artwork and stories from Egypt to Greece, often depicted as potent guardians of treasure. But what if these legendary creatures weren't just figments of the imagination? What if they were inspired by something real? One possible origin for the griffin myth could be the discovery of fossilized remains. In particular, the fossils of Protoceratops, a small dinosaur with a frill around its neck and a beak-like mouth, have been found in areas where ancient people lived. These fossils, when uncovered, might have seemed so strange and unfamiliar that they could have been interpreted as the remains of a legendary creature, half lion, half bird. Another theory suggests that ancient artwork could have contributed to the creation of the griffin. Ancient cultures were often fascinated by combining the features of different animals, creating mythical creatures with mixed characteristics. The griffin was an artistic representation of the strength and majesty of both lions and eagles, two creatures revered for their power. 6. Cyclopes. Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants from Greek mythology, are some of the most famous creatures in ancient stories. These enormous beings were said to have one eye in the middle of their forehead, and were often portrayed as skilled blacksmiths, creating powerful weapons for the gods. But could these giants have been based on something real? Something that early humans might have encountered? One possibility is that the myth of the Cyclops originated from ancient elephant skulls. Elephant skulls are huge, and their eye sockets are located in the center of the skull, making them appear as if there was just one giant eye. Early humans might have stumbled upon these massive skulls and, seeing only the central eye socket, could have easily believed they had found the remains of a giant one-eyed creature. It's easy to see how such a discovery could lead to the legend of the Cyclops. Another theory is that Cyclops were inspired by people with congenital disabilities, specifically those with cyclopia, a condition in which an individual is born with a single eye in the center of their face. Though rare, this condition could have sparked stories of giant, one-eyed beings who seem to possess power. 5. Mermaids. Mermaids, half-human, half-fish creatures, have been a staple of folklore for centuries. These enchanting beings are often depicted with the upper body of a woman and the tail of a fish, and they've appeared in stories worldwide. But could mermaids have been inspired by something tangible rather than just a product of pure imagination? One of the most likely explanations comes from the sightings of aquatic mammals like manatees and dugongs. These animals, which are often referred to as sea cows, have large, round bodies and long tails, but their faces and features can be quite similar to those of humans from a distance. Sailors who were isolated at sea for long periods might have mistaken these creatures for mermaids, especially when viewed from a distance or in poor lighting. There are records of sailors claiming to have seen mermaids, only to later describe them more like large sea mammals with human-like faces. In some cases, these sightings were probably misidentified dugongs or manatees, animals not well known to people back then. 4. Chimera. The chimera is one of the most bizarre creatures in Greek mythology, a monstrous hybrid with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and a serpent for a tail. It's a terrifying beast that breathes fire and is said to have terrorized ancient lands. But how could such a strange creature come to life in ancient stories? Could there be a real-world explanation behind this mythical monster? One possibility is that the chimera was inspired by the discovery of fossilized remains of different animals found together. Ancient people didn't have the scientific knowledge we do today, so when they stumbled upon fossils of different creatures mixed together, their imaginations could have filled in the gaps. They might have found the remains of a lion, a goat, and a serpent, all in one place, and thought they were looking at a single terrifying creature. Over time, the Chimera myth could have developed from these real-life discoveries. Another explanation could be that the Chimera is the product of ancient creativity and imagination. People in the ancient world often combined different animal features in their artwork and stories, blending the characteristics of powerful creatures like lions, goats, and snakes to create an even more fearsome monster. 3. Basilisk. The basilisk, often called the king of serpents, is one of the most feared creatures in mythology. Described as a giant serpent with deadly powers, it was said to have the ability to kill with just a glance or a breath. The idea of such a terrifying creature has been passed down through centuries, but could it be based on something real? Could real, dangerous reptiles have inspired the basilisk? One possible explanation is that the basilisk myth originated from encounters with cobras, one of the most dangerous snakes in the world. Cobras, with their iconic hood and venomous bite, could easily have been seen as mystical creatures capable of incredible power. In ancient times, these snakes were often feared and revered, and exaggerating their abilities could have led to the creation of the basilisk myth. Another possibility is that other large reptiles like iguanas or monitor lizards could have inspired the basilisk. While not as dangerous as cobras, these creatures are often large, with striking appearances. Ancient people might have encountered these reptiles and exaggerated their size or dangerous traits, turning them into a deadly serpent king in folklore. 2. Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds are among the most fascinating creatures in Native American mythology. These giant birds, capable of creating thunderstorms with the flap of their wings, are said to be powerful, almost divine beings. With their immense size and supernatural abilities, Thunderbirds are often associated with both strength and mystery. But could these legendary birds have been inspired by actual creatures or natural phenomena? One possibility is that Thunderbirds were inspired by large bird species, like eagles or condors. These birds are massive, with wingspans that can reach up to 10 feet or more. To the Native American tribes who lived in areas where these birds soared, seeing one of these creatures could have felt almost supernatural. Add in their sharp claws and impressive flight, and it's easy to see how their presence might have been exaggerated into the myth of a thunderous, godlike bird. Another explanation is that storms themselves could have inspired the Thunderbirds. In many Native American cultures, storms were seen as the work of powerful spirits. The booming thunder and flashes of lightning could easily have been linked to the flapping of a giant bird's wings, creating a connection between weather and mythology. 1. Chupacabra. The Chupacabra is one of the most famous modern mythical creatures, especially in Latin American folklore, known for allegedly attacking livestock, particularly goats, and draining their blood. This creature has been described in various ways. Still, it's often said to resemble a reptilian creature with spines along its back. But could the Chupacabra be more than just a myth? Could it be based on real animals or perhaps even hoaxes? One popular theory is that the Chupacabra could simply be a coyote suffering from mange, a skin disease caused by mites. Mange causes the fur to fall out, leaving the animal looking unnaturally gaunt and strange. Coyotes with mange have been reported to appear almost reptilian, with wrinkled skin and exaggerated features, which could explain some of the descriptions of the Chupacabra. Another possibility is that the Chupacabra is a misidentified animal, perhaps a completely unknown species. In remote areas, new animals are sometimes discovered, and it's possible that the creature was based on an animal no one had seen before. Finally, the idea of the Chupacabra could simply be a hoax. Over the years, many reported sightings of the creature turned out to be exaggerated or entirely fabricated stories meant to explain livestock deaths. As with many modern myths, the Chupacabra could be a product of fear and imagination. Conclusion. So, we've explored 11 fascinating mythical creatures, each with legendary stories and eerie powers. From the fire-breathing Chimera to the one-eyed giants known as Cyclopes, and from mermaids to the mysterious Chupacabra, these creatures have captured the human imagination for centuries. But as we've seen, many of these myths could have been inspired by real animals, rare fossils, or even the exaggeration of everyday experiences. It's amazing to think that creatures like dragons might have been sparked by the discovery of dinosaur fossils, or that unicorns could be based on animals like narwhals. And, when you look at the Kraken, it's hard not to think of giant squids lurking in the deep, their size and mystery giving rise to one of the most famous sea monsters of all time. The truth is, myths and legends often blur the line between fact and fiction. These creatures, whether real or imagined, show us how humans have always sought to explain the unknown. They remind us of our natural curiosity and our need to create stories to understand the world around us. So, the next time you hear a myth, look beyond the fantasy. Think about what real-world phenomena or creatures might have inspired it. Who knows? What seems impossible today could have a real explanation tomorrow.